Paralysis! It is I, Tantus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on the Pathfinder role-playing game system. Hey, we're almost done talking about it, but let's continue with the discussion where we left off, and of course, let's discuss an important one to talk about, some more special abilities, and start with Paralysis. So, you can get paralyzed. Certain spells or special abilities or even supernatural abilities of creatures will cause you to be paralyzed. It's important to note that some poisons paralyze, but we talked about poisons with the other afflictions. So we're not going to really talk about the poison-based ones. Now, when you're paralyzed, you can't talk, you can't move, you can't act, and you're rooted in place. Not even your friends can make you move. You're just stuck. This doesn't mean you can't do anything while you're paralyzed. You can take mental actions. You can think stuff. Any action you have that is purely mental, you can do just fine. Now, if you were flying and you got paralyzed, well, you're going to fall, and you'll take falling damage appropriately. If you were swimming, well, you won't swim anymore. You'll sink. And if you can't breathe air, you'll drown. So, being paralyzed can have secondary effects. Now, there's also scent. Scent is an ability for a creature with extraordinary senses to effectively sniff out or track foes, sniff out hidden foes or track other foes down by their smell. Now, scent works about 30-foot radius that you can detect a general scent with. If something is upwind from you, though, you can get it about 60 feet away. Downwind, 15 feet away. Now, particularly powerful smells, you can actually use it double this range here. It's a lot easier to do it. And creatures that would have special abilities, like the troglodytes that specifically have negative stench abilities, 3 times the range. They're very easy to pick up. They don't smell good. They're very unpleasant, but easy to detect with your scent. Scent allows you to detect presences. You effectively, within that range, whatever is appropriate for the type of smell and for the distance and for the wind, you will detect it. Now, this isn't knowing where things are exactly. You don't know exactly where it is. I can spend a move action to pinpoint the direction of it. Then I can move in that direction, and if I get within 5 feet of the smell, I pinpoint its exact location, and I'm not required to see it. So this is a way that I could detect invisible foes or hidden foes very easily. I can get within 5 feet of them when sniffing them out. My scent will tell me the direction to, well, travel to them. I can also use scent to track. Now, scenting with tracking works like basic survival, that I'm following a trail rather than footprints. It's a smell. And it will have a base survival check of DC 10 in order to track this scent. Now, this will not be modified by surface conditions or visibility at all. Other modifiers like time and things like that will affect this and will alter this DC. There are other factors that can affect the DC of your survival checks in order to track something by scent. Running through water can be difficult for you to track a scent through. The exception is if you're a water-breathing creature with scent, then you're fine. Another overpowering scent could interfere with it. Most of the time, this just increases the base DC. Using one of these will increase the base DC to 20 in order to track the scent. And much like you can identify faces by looking at them, if you can become familiar with scents. It's another sense of things that you can become familiar with, especially if there's this ability that you can be, oh, that's that guy I know. I've identified them. It sometimes will help out when it comes to tracking. Now, the last thing I want to talk about today is spell resistance. At least we're going to start talking about spell resistance. Spell resistance is a special ability that creatures have to, well, avoid spells. Creatures with spell resistance are more likely to be unaffected by a spell. A spell resistance will be reflected in a number. And if I'm attempting to target something with spell resistance with a spell, I have to make a caster level check. I roll a d20, I add my caster level to it. If I meet or beat the spell resistance, I'm affecting it with my spell. This is like AC against spells. The thing about this is the creature with spell resistance has to do nothing for spell resistance to be in effect. They don't even have to be aware the spell is being cast on them for spell resistance to have an effect. It just happens. And spell resistance only applies to that creature. if a spell would affect an area and have spell resistance, or affect multiple targets, if mine overcomes it, it does not stop the spell, it only protects me. Spell resistance itself, though, doesn't always apply. There are certain creatures that have abilities which allow them to overcome spells, plus there are certain spells which spell resistance doesn't even apply to. Each spell will list whether spell resistance applies to it. Now, you can voluntarily lower your spell resistance. You can choose to open yourself up to be able to be affected by spells. This is a standard action that you can take, doesn't provoke an attack of opportunity, and at the beginning of your next turn, your spell resistance would return. Unless you choose on your next turn to spend another standard action reducing your spell resistance. It's important to note that your own spells, items, and abilities, your own personal ones, won't be interfered with by your own spell resistance. So if I have spell resistance, cast a spell, use an item, use an ability, it doesn't affect it. I can affect myself all I want. I would have to voluntarily lower it if my ally over here wants to hit me with a spell. Now, I can't give my spell resistance power to another. Just because I'm touching them doesn't protect them. If I do something to block them in a way, it just would provide cover. It wouldn't interfere with the spell at all. There are some exceptions, though. Certain creatures may have the ability listed under them to either bestow spell resistance to another or share their spell resistance with another. It will specifically be under that creature. Some items may give spell resistance, some items may give spell resistance. So you can see there are things that do instill spell resistance, but they are very specified on a general term. No, not sharing it whatsoever. Last thing I want to say for today about spell resistance is spell resistance doesn't stack with each other. If I have multiple spell resistances from multiple sources that I'm gaining, they overlap. So only the highest applies. But that's it for today. So I introduced you to 3 new special abilities. First off, Paralysis, which makes you freeze up, and then you can't move, and you're helpless. You can take mental actions, but there aren't many mental actions out there. Other than that, you're kind of in trouble until your friends protect you and help you. I talked about Scent, which is I can detect when creatures are nearby to me, whether they're hidden, invisible, or just in the darkness where I normally couldn't see. Over there, I can track it down. Granted, this doesn't give me vision. If I'm attacking something that's invisible, still 50% miss chance. This I can just use to pinpoint the square. Now, I can also use it to track someone down, that if I don't see any footprints, and I can scent, I can track them by scent, leading me to where they're at. Finally, I introduced spell resistance. My ability, or a creature's ability, to resist spells. It functions a lot like AC. You have to caster level check to overcome it. And I went into the details of how it works. Now granted, there are some other things about spell resistance we want to talk about, the nature of overcoming it and things like that, which we will discuss in the next episode. And next episode we will also cover the conditions. I'll at least start doing it. I'll figure out how much I want to dive into the depths of talking about all of them, or just generally talk about them. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It's just for the channel, the Empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon. Link description below. There's some great rewards there. Helps to grow and improve the channel and the Empire. But until the next time, I bid you farewell.